You see the crazy looking guy on the screen? That's me. And that's me too, before my 8-month transformation. Hi, I'm Carlos Guerrero, and I made the award-winning movie Promises. I want to take you into the depths of what it took for me to make this feature film. You will learn about the idea for the script, as well as casting 2-time Golden Globe nominee Stephen Bauer, the filming, the editing, the miracles, the downfalls, the deceptions and betrayals behind the scenes. You'll learn from my experience what they don't teach you in film school.
Cut!
I don't believe in makeup. Neither does our budget. I use the real thing, like the nails. The nails are real. These have been growing for about 4 months now, maybe a little more, and I've been drinking a lot of vitamin E so they don't break. The beard is real as it can be. I haven't shaved, done anything. I haven't groomed in 6 months. It's cool when you go to like a film event and all the filmmakers are telling you, oh yeah, whatever, and the actors, right? But when you go to like your kid's school, it kind of sucks. And now I finally know what it means to be, judged.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Oh my God. Oh, please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. Please don't hurt me. I'll do anything you say. I will. Oh.
People will look at me and they'll immediately shy away from me. I can only bet that my kids' friends' parents are telling their kids, don't hang around with that kid. It has given me a sort of an isolation. Everybody treats me differently, and it's cool in a way, and in another way it's depressing. The other day I went to go see my accountant. I see him every month, but it's been about 2.5 or 3 months that I see him, and I was standing right next to him. He looks at me and he says, good morning, and it keeps going. I'm saying, why is he so cold at me? And then he turns again and he says, oh my God, it's you, Carlos. I get that a lot from people. People just don't recognize me. I talk to people. I talk to psychologists who used to work for Camilla's house.
I hate you! I hate you! I hate you!
I spoke to her and I was telling her the story and all this, and she goes and she told me, Carlos, you nailed it on the head. And then she told me a few stories that added to my thing. Oh, there was this one character that I saw at a fast food restaurant who I observed him. I sat there and I observed him for 2 hours.
Walk to the park.
If anyone finds out that I altered those documents, I can be disbarred.
I'll buy you some ice cream. Ice cream, huh?
Why would you give it all up to an abandoned children's fund?
They need the money.
No, you need the money. Have you looked in the mirror lately? Have you?
I don't like.
Although this is a movie and this is something that was created, a story, I do believe that there's a lot of people in the world today that are going through something similar to this.
Yes, I do.
So why would you give it all up?
So I have learned to look at homeless people in a different light now.
It's the reason. Police not here.
Homeless people are not bums. They're very troubled people. And that's one of the reasons I think I wrote about this, is because I was intrigued with this homeless people thing since I was a little kid. I used to see this guy fighting with like a pole, and people say, why is this guy fighting with a pole, And so I was always intrigued with that. I always used to ask myself, what does it take for a man a normal man, for living in this world? What could possibly make him reach to that level where he doesn't care about himself, doesn't care about anything, and just goes through life, in that zone? I believe anybody can be in that position, even Mr. Trump. Anybody who would go through an experience, I don't want to give off anything for the film, but anybody who goes through an experience like my character had to go through is susceptible to it.
I wanted to write a script for my son and I to portray the lead parts in. Sort of create our own work.
You didn't make it.
Carlitos has been preparing since about the age of 3. And some years after that, he came to me one day and said, "Papi, I want to be in a movie or a commercial with you." I freaked because I know the downside to being an actor as well. But I listened and I knew he had to do it.
Dad. I think the fish is dying.
They die, and then we take them home. Fry them up in a pan and eat them.
Are you gonna die?
We're all gonna die, buddy.
I don't want you to die.
After working with Carlitos on several projects
Dad. Mom says that you're moving out.
and seeing his performances, I realized not only that he was ready to portray Rolly in this film, but also that he had developed his God-given talent, a talent that had been trickled down from his grandfather, my dad.
But why are you moving out?
It's complicated.
Is it because of the BITCH?
It's nobody's fault.
But Mom says because of the BITCH.
I'm moving in alone. I'll get a place with another room for you. You're gonna have 2 rooms.
If you want, you could move in with me.
His performance on Promises earned him a Future Star Award and a Best Actor nomination in the film festival circuit.
Dad, blew the stupid candles. It's your fault. We always have to do the same thing. Mommy.
Carlitos' passion for acting is a reflection of the man who this movie is dedicated to. Cuban actor and poet Jorge Raúl Guerrero, known in the Latin world as El Actor de la Poesía, which means the actor of poetry, for the way in which he used to live the words of his poetry, and how he used to transmit emotions to his audience. He recorded more than 10 albums, had a ton of his own poetry shows, opened acts for Cuban icons like Benny Moré, Celia Cruz, Willie Chirino, to name a few. And as an actor, he worked on thousands of voiceovers, numerous TV shows, theater plays, telenovelas, feature films, and with his broken English, even landed a part in the feature film Fires Within, alongside Jimmy Smits. He had his own radio shows, and he was recognized by many as one of the greatest voice talents and poets of all times. But this is not why Promises is dedicated to my dad. I dedicated it to him because in spite of all the work he always had, he always made time to spend with me. He would come home and say, "Carlito, come on, grab the checkers games." Actually, he would say it in Spanish. "Carlito, dale, agarra el juego de damas que vamos a jugar, vamos." Yeah, I miss my dad.
Here is a picture of Rolly and Rolando.
I had Rolando playing checkers in one of the scenes that I wrote in honor of my dad.
A $30,000 reward has been offered for any...
The idea for the story of Promises came to me one day when Carlito calls me up as I was driving to Orlando from Miami for a job I had booked. And he gets mad at me and tells me that I had promised him to take him to the water park that day.
You were supposed to take me to the water park.
So I'm caught up with all these feelings of guilt for not following through on my promise to take him to the water park. At the same time, you know, the pressures of having to go and produce to make money. So on that trip, I wrote the synopsis, and 3 months later, I had a script for a 20-minute short. Handed it over to my sister. She read it and she said, "Carlos, this is not a short film. This is a feature film." I could have killed her, but a year later, I had the full script for Promises, and I had it registered with the Writers Guild of America. Good thing, because without seeing it coming, somebody I trusted, somebody I'll talk to you about later, tried to claim the rights to my movie. Now that I had a final draft on my Promises script, all that I really needed was the money. Well, in 1 year of searching for the funds, my budget went from $5 million to $2.5 million to $500,000. And no matter how low I brought the budget to, I could not get an investor. And then, out of the blue, almost simultaneously, 2 producers became interested in the project. But before I could even get excited, they both wanted to change the story. One of them, who I consider one of the best filmmakers here in South Florida, told me he wanted to produce this film, but that I would need to delete one of the scenes, the scene on the boat, because the dialogue was about God.
What do you do in heaven?
That would limit my audience, he said. At that moment, I knew he wouldn't be the producer on my film. And I decided I would produce this film myself.
But some people kill themselves.
So I produced the film and I played the lead part. But that's not all I did. I did wardrobe, props, location scouting, craft services. I remember sometimes the night before a shoot, I'd be working 10, 11 o'clock at night just preparing for craft services, making sure that on the set we always had water and food to eat in between meals for the actors and the crew members. I did anything that needed to get done to make this movie happen.
Let's just run through the lines, Carlos.
Let's catch on.
Okay, but do the
Who's that?
visa, yeah, already.
Producer.
All my money goes.
But there was one thing I knew I did not want to do, and that was direct the film. So I reached out to a friend of mine, Joel Rodriguez, who I had worked with on several projects, and I approached him, I gave him the script. He immediately said yes, and he hopped onto the project. Joel is always very soft-spoken, and he has this easy, subtle way of approaching the actors when he's directing that allows us to be relaxed and comfortable on the set. And he's always encouraging us to bring what we have.
Step off, man.
This allows us a lot of freedom and lets us bring our best to the scene. He always used to say, Carlos, I have the best job here because I'm watching the movie from the best seat in the house. And I think that his philosophy on this is what earned him his Best Director award at the Treasure Coast International Film Festival for his work on Promises. And I honestly don't believe that there could have been a better director for this film.
A dolphin, not the flipper kind. We gotta protect those. You know that, right? They're protected.
Cut!
Being that we had the restrictions that we had on our budget, I convinced Joel, our director, that he could shoot this thing himself. And after arguing for a little while on this subject, I convinced him. And so the first day of shooting, we tried it. And at the end of the day, after shooting for about 10 hours, we realized that we had wasted our time and that the entire day of shooting was lost. I learned a valuable lesson that day and immediately hired Alpheus Joseph as our director of photography, who recommended James Mills to light the scenes and Luigi Wu for the sound. And finally, we had our first professional crew. But that wouldn't be the last of my lessons, as the next 2 shoot dates proved that anything can happen on the set.
Cut.
I had hired some friends and family to work as PAs, and we had a HMI light that fell and broke, and we also had a track that we had rented that had broken as well. And those 2 days ended up costing me $3,000 that I had not budgeted for. From that moment, I knew that I could only have professionals who knew what they were doing on the set. With this crew, we shot all of the flashback scenes, and 90% of them were shot on handheld, as that was Alpheus's choice for photography. Something I wasn't too convinced of until a good friend of mine, Angel Barroeta, took a look at the footage. He's one of the best photographers that I know. And, he advised me and told me, Carlos, you have to sometimes take what you don't like and make believe you did it on purpose. Find a reason why you would have done that on purpose. and you'll get your answers. And so I did, and sure as heck, I got my answers. After editing all of the flashback scenes on Final Cut Pro, a program that I taught myself to use with the help of Joel, I went out and applied for a loan at my bank. And I knew for sure I would get it because, hey, I had equity on my house, right? Wrong. A couple of months later, the bank denied me my loan. So now I went to go see a couple of other institutions, but they wouldn't even give me an application. And I wondered if maybe my long nails or my overburnt skin or my crazy hair and ungroomed beard had anything to do with it. So I found a bank online that I was able to use and applied, and they approved me and everything, and they never had to even take a look at me. So I got lucky with that. I got blessed. The whole ordeal of getting the loan lasted a frustrating 6 months or more, but it was all for the better because now the transformation was more noticeable. Now with the money in hand, I was ready to shoot the next sequence where Rolando is homeless. Since the flashbacks were all shot on handheld, or most of it was shot on handheld, I wanted to have the homeless portion of Rolando's life to be as still as possible. So we shot almost everything there on tripods and on very smooth tracks. I always wanted the flashback scenes to feel completely different than the scenes where Rolando is the homeless. And my decision was to get a whole new crew for this portion of the movie. We changed everybody except for obviously Joel, who was our director. I was blessed to have contracted such wonderful crew members like Kevin Killalay for the lighting, Scott Alouette and Alberto Saad for the sound, Jennifer Gallipolt assisting the camera, and Naima Holland doing PA work, and the rest of the crew. But there was this one individual who didn't turn out to be such a blessing. This guy, who I knew from another project I had worked on, convinced me that he wanted to help out and that he wanted to do this in honor of his son and could not accept any money. I agreed to let him be a part of the project and made one of the worst mistakes I've made in my entire life. I trusted him. On the day that we wrapped filming, this guy approached Joel and me to ask us if we would give him an opportunity to edit the film. I gave him a set of instructions of what I wanted and told him, you're going to do 1 or 2 scenes, and then when they're done, we sit down, we review it, and if we're happy with the work, then we make a decision on whether or not you can continue editing. And he agreed. Then I made my next mistake. I handed all my raw footage over to him, including the flashback scenes that I had already edited. Then some time went by, and I hadn't heard from this guy, so I call him up. And he starts telling me that he's swamped with commercial work, that he had to take care of that first before he could sit down, because he wanted to sit down with time and do it right. And what kind of pressure could I give a guy who's doing me a favor, my friend, right? I called him, telling him that we needed to submit to Sundance, and he says that the movie's already almost completely edited. At this point, I was livid because I thought, well, we were supposed to sit down when you edited 1 or 2 scenes. This guy's telling me now that he's done almost all of the movie. On the day of the deadline, he hands me a DVD for me to send over to Sundance. Now I go home to watch the footage that I have never seen before. And much to my surprise, everything that I had told him not to do, he did. And didn't do the things that I told him to do. So I withdrew from Sundance. I was furious. I hated everything that he had done. The editing was horrible. It looked like some amateur had done something with it. And then, the biggest blow of all, the last and final credit on the film. This motion picture, copyright, blah, blah, blah company. A company owned by him. Now, I don't know what this guy was thinking, but I had my kid's house on the line. I had been working already on the project for over 3 years. I was not about to let this guy take my movie away from me. After an incredible amount of stress and sleep deprivation that lasted weeks, I got my property back. Started from scratch to edit the film, And the film came out the way that I wanted it to come out from the beginning. I did it my way. Lots of crazy things happened to me behind the scenes. Like when I went back to the car rental place, because I needed some pickup shots of the red Porsche that I had rented, I find out that that car that I was driving for 3 days was actually a stolen car and had been impounded by the police. I had so many obstacles on this project that there's too many for me to mention. But with the same token, can you imagine what would have happened to me if I would have got stopped by the cops while I was driving that stolen vehicle? So I believe also that I had somebody protecting this movie and protecting me. I guess you could say I had a very powerful silent partner on this film that utilized me to send out this much needed message to the world. I would have to be ignorant not to acknowledge that the miracles that occurred for me to be able to make this movie happen were because of the blessings that were sent to me by God. I told a good friend of mine that I was shooting a movie and that I had the budget restrictions that I had and I wanted to shoot on HD. And he went back to this little closet he had in his office and he pulled out a case, brand new case, put it on the table and said, "Here's my new HD camera. Go make your movie." And I will forever be grateful to Carlos from Universal Casting for this. We had auditions at Universal Casting for most of the characters, and I wanted the best actor for each role. So I signed a contract with the union, the Screen Actors Guild, and we saw a lot of people.
Hey, yeah, don't get me wrong, mister. But have you seen a professional? I know someone who can help you.
Most of the best auditions that we saw were from union actors like Kevin Dean Hackett. But on rare occasions, we were blown away with the performances of actors like John Summers, who didn't have much experience at the time.
So is it true? Are you a famous football player?
Hey! Don't you ever do anything like that again. You hear me, you spoiled little brat?
Not all actors were booked from the casting. I remember booking Mike Benitez for a small part that most people would call insignificant. But this guy was so good and brought that character to life so well that I had to bring this guy back.
Look, have you ever driven a car like that?
No, haven't.
So I wrote a scene for him to work with none other than Steven Bauer.
To be behind the wheel, to drive it, to be seen in it. Oh, that's a whole other thing, man. I mean...
What about the police? You didn't think about maybe making a police report? 3 days, Vince. 3 days you've had the car.
Another blessing for promises.
Come on, guys, come on.
Hey, he was a whack job.
I was at a red carpet event talking to television show host Cristina Saralegui, and at the precise moment that I was explaining to her that I was having trouble finding a church to shoot a couple of scenes that I had to shoot, she screams out, "Padre Alberto!" And I turn around, and it's Father Alberto Gutier. And so she introduces me to him, and he gives me his info. He tells me to email him a synopsis of the movie and tell him the reason why I needed to make this movie happen. So I did so, and the following day, he made it happen for me to be able to shoot my scenes at St. Francis de Sales. I asked Padre Alberto if he would mind playing the part of the priest, but he said no, which was great because we ended up getting the talent of Roberto Escobar.
It is when we distance ourselves from God that we're most vulnerable to sin. That is why we have to pray and stay connected with the Holy Spirit.
Who was flawless in his performance. So convincing that there were people in the church who actually asked him if they could come back to see him for a confession.
Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been a while since my last confession.
A lot of the people who have collaborated on this have done it without any interest whatsoever. Like the bait shop owner, they were fascinated that the story was very similar to a story of a homeless man who used to hang around the outside of the store and used to pick food out of the garbage. And
He actually died a year ago. And when I spoke to Christine tells me, in honor of this gentleman, I don't remember his name, but they have a picture of the homeless man in the shop. When he saw me, he says, "You look just like him. Look, come over here." And he showed me the picture of the guy. So she tells to me, "Carlos, in honor of this gentleman, I want you to film in my shop. You come, do whatever you need to do." She's been very kind to us, as so many people. I must have sent out hundreds of emails and made tons of calls to hospitals across the state of Florida in search of a hospital that would allow me to film inside of an OR so that I could film the scene where Vanessa gives birth to Rolly. Everyone I spoke to had the same reply. They said I was crazy, that it couldn't happen, that there was no way that I could film inside of a real OR.
I'd say she did pretty good for someone who couldn't have any children.
Oh, you mean this is a miracle baby?
Yeah, he is.
I'll tell you this, you just have to rely on your faith, because these doctors can't predict everything. This is a special gift from God, and you guys just better spoil him.
Oh, we will.
I get a phone call from a lady who says that she received my email and was intrigued with the story and wanted to know a little bit more about it. And shortly after that, she made it happen for me to film at Broward General Hospital. Truly another miracle. And when I asked, why was this person allowing me to film inside of a real OR in a hospital like Broward General, I was told that the story hit so close to home for her that she pushed and moved mountains for me to be able to film and make that movie in her hospital. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Kathy. And thanks to my great friends, Vladimir and Clarines, for allowing me to take their business, ABE Cargo, and turn it into a police station. Sam from Marouche Restaurant, who allowed me not only to film in his restaurant, but also fed the cast and crew. Thanks to my friend, attorney Haas Hernandez, Rolando had an office with a view. My sister Mari for lending me her son. My sister Diana and my cousin Kenya for letting me use their houses. My brother George for allowing me to film on his boat, and for filling in for an actor who couldn't make it one day. My sister Daisy, who did all of the still photography. My mom and number one supporter gave me her house, her car, and everything she could help me with. She was my biggest motivator, believing in me when I didn't even believe in myself, convincing me that with God, anything is possible. Thank you, Mom, and thanks to everyone who helped make Promises the feature film that it is. Thanks to the contributions of my friends and family, I was able to bring the quality of the production up to par with the best independent films. But I still needed money, lots of it. I mean, I had to pay for food, wardrobe, props, equipment, the crew, the 60 actors with speaking parts, permits, locations like the jail, or like the Seaquarium where we shot all of our underwater scenes. I had to hire a crew of scuba divers to keep us safe when we shot our underwater scenes, and also to keep my son safe when we shot in open water. And I'll never forget the times that I had run out of money, and my son came up to me and said, "Dad, my money is your money. Take what you need from my savings." And that's how he became executive producer. There's things you can't plan, like my good friend Leonard Chris passing away only 2 months after we wrapped on Promises. He never got to see the film. Or like when my mom passed away, catapulting me into a dark depression for over 2 years, a depression that only her own words of encouragement could get me out of. Those words I still hear today. Carlito, con Dios todo se puede. I wanted so bad to make Promises a great feature film. I prayed about it for years, and when the time was right, the greatest producer of all made his miracles and performed his magic.
He is magical. He's God. I would be ignorant to ignore that fact that he's the one who has made this possible.